Nesbitt said the other day, sometimes it's appropriate to be abstruse, and that is to say that the story or the stories to be told are going to mess with our head. But it's been found that unlike the Zen stories, which are somewhat like koans that trip up our mind, that the Sufi stories, although they do addle our mind, they're embedded with a truth, or the truth, we might even say. So let's see what we can glean, or maybe not glean, because to glean is to use our mind and find a little thread that leads us somewhere. So perhaps we have to find another word to describe what it is that happens for us. And it's a story about a man called Yousef. Now Yousef was an ordinary man. He did not have any faith in particular, although he did follow the customs of the day. But he lived with the belief that he could achieve things by his own efforts and with the cooperation of society, make a life for himself. But it was a time of great change, and something happened to Yousef to bring him to a place where suddenly he decided that he was, to coin a phrase that we might use ourselves, to let go and let God. Now he had heard that if we did give everything over to God or the universe or whatever it might be called, that our needs are taken care of, that life becomes easy with a flow, not requiring any effort. So Yousef decided that he was going to set out under this premise. And so indeed he did. Leaving everything behind him, he put on the turban which designated the seeker, and he set out. Now, in his first day, of course, he was still within the city parameters, and as he sat and waited, the rich people came by in their carriages with their finely capricious horses, and when they saw him with his turban, they waved to him and greeted him, because this was customary to kind of give acknowledgement of a seeker, so to speak. But then, of course, he had to move along, and the next day he found that nothing had come to him to assuage the grumble that was beginning in his stomach. But he did see a group of pilgrims go by who were munching bread and cheese, and they too greeted him. But his wandering, you might call it, took him to the side of a river. And while he was sitting there, experiencing the physical pangs that came from an absence of having food, but watching and in that state somehow being intensely aware of his surroundings in ways that he hadn't been before. He suddenly noticed a little rustle in the reeds of the river. And so he got up and he waded a little bit in, And there he found a little package tied up with a ribbon. And when he opened the package, the distinct aroma and delightful experience of his nostrils was halva, that wonderful sweetmeat made of almonds and fruit and nuts. Here it was. So he enjoyed taking in this food, which he named the food of paradise. And he thought to himself, I'm on to something here. If this happens to me every day, then I know that I'm on to a track to find something. And so he waited. And staying by the river, sure enough, the next day the packet arrived. And again he had his repast. Now, he recognized that this packet was being carried by the river to the place where he was at. But if he set out to discover where the packet was coming from, then perhaps he would find the source of the truth that he was looking for. So he set out to follow the river. And of course, each day the packet arrived a little earlier than it had the day before because of his location in the river. But sure, the packet arrived. So he enjoyed his repast until suddenly he came to a bend in the river, and when he turned, the river widened to a great degree. And there, in the middle of the river, there was a little island. And on that island, there was an extraordinary edifice, like a castle. Somehow, he knew that this castle would reveal to him this source. If he could follow where this packet was coming from. But a strange thing happened for him. Just as he was having this pondering, an old dervish, very old dervish, although ancient, very sprightly in the way that he was approaching Yousef. And they gave each other the exchange of greetings that was normal in such circumstances. And then the dervish asked Yousef, "What are you on about, young man?" And Yousef replied that he was on a mission, on a quest to find truth. And he had come thus far where he had discovered a certain link that brought him to this place, and he knew that in yonder castle was the source of truth that he was seeking. "Oh," said the dervish, "it's obvious you don't know what this edifice signifies. It is where a beautiful princess is held because she would not marry the old man who demanded her hand. So he had her ensconced in this castle and has it protected by means that are beyond the usual ken of mankind. And these have to be traversed before one can enter to meet the princess. Oh, I know this is the source of the truth that I am seeking. I must find a way to enter that castle. So the old dervish said, well, I myself am on a pilgrimage and a mission, but I can give you the means of evoking that which you will need to enter this castle and meet the princess. Are you willing to undertake this? Recognizing, young man, that man can only understand what he is ready and capable of understanding. Yousef replied, all I know is that I must find the source, find the truth of which the indications have already been revealed to me. So saying, the dervish gave Yousef what we might term perhaps a mantra. Or was it an affirmation? Well, who knows what it was. But anyway, Yousef undertook this practice. And for the next days, he adhered to that practice without let up. And suddenly, as he was gazing at the castle, out onto the balcony came a being of such beauty that his breath was almost taken away. But as he looked, this being, obviously the princess, tossed a package over the parapet which floated down the river to where Yousef stood. So he knew this was the source. He must be in the presence of this being to learn what it was that he sought. So continuing with that which the dervish had given him, there came a moment when suddenly Yousef found himself being carried off. Some force, some power seemed to lift him out of himself. But anyway, suddenly he found himself in a place in front of, was it a being? But in any event, this being said to him, I am the king of the jinns, and I have come in answer to your call. What is it you seek, young man? And Yousef, of course, replied, I seek the source of truth. And I know it's to be found in the castle nearby to that place where I was. Oh, said the king of the jinns, you know that man can only understand according to his capacity to understand. And Yousef said, all I know is that I must find truth. Oh, said the king of the jinns, and with not another word, Yousef found himself returning to the place by the river, but now he was accompanied by a bevy of jinns, and together they approached the castle. But it became very evident that the supernatural forces that surrounded that castle were impenetrable by man. But of course now Yousef had the aid of the jinns, and they were able to break through what appeared to be a wall of ogress, demons. And after they broke through that wall, they were able to rend the mesh that seemed like a steel wall behind that first guard, and then to break through the third and last of the supernatural forces. And when they did, at that moment, the jinns, having finished their tasks so assigned, returned from whence they came. And suddenly Yousef found appearing before him a bridge. He crossed to the bridge, and there was a soldier waiting for him, but not obstructing his way, merely guiding him up the stairways which led to the chamber of the princess. When he entered that chamber, the princess greeted him and thanked him. Thank you for breaking down the barriers which have held me captive. Now I can return to my father, but I will give you whatever is in my power to give you. And Yousef said, I seek nothing but to know the source and to discover truth. And the princess responded, I will answer you according to my ability to do so. What is it that you want to know? And Yousef said, please, will you tell me the reason behind the packet of halva which is thrown in to the river? every day the food of paradise? And the princess responded, that which you call the food of paradise is the residue of that which I use to clean my body every day before my bath of goat's milk. And Yousef, in that moment, had his answer, moving beyond the recognition of understanding that man can only know according to his capacity to understand. Does this story mess with your head? Or does it, in its telling, reveal to us the truth that's embedded, the secret that is said to be contained in every story? Looking at the experiences of our life, being the stories that they are they a thread that brings us to the truth, the secret embedded in each of them?